Welcome to MMA Fancast. I'm your host, Luke, and I'm joined by the youngest fighter I've ever had on the show, 13-year-old Jaden Palombine. Jaden, welcome.
Hi.
It is great having you on the show. I call you a fighter because you are sitting in front of all your awards and things. You've done a ton of mixed martial arts or martial arts that are mixed because you haven't done an MMA fight yet, obviously, because of your age, but you have a BJJ match coming up here in Clearwater, Florida. You're going to be flying down. It's a big event. So I want to talk to you about a bunch of different things. But first off, if you're okay with me jumping in, I have a list here that says that your BJJ record at 13 years of age overall since you've started is 187 wins and 7 losses. 186 of those 187 wins come by submission. Can we talk about that? How have you had so many matches in BJJ? Can we jump in on that question?
Yeah. When I was younger, I just flew out to every tournament I can.
Okay.
And
okay.
It was fun to compete. I just enjoyed it a lot.
Certainly. And you started jiu-jitsu when you were, looking here, I think you were 5?
Yeah.
5. Okay. And given the rate of your finishing, what leads to so many finishes? I mean, 186 finishes out of 187 wins.
Armbar. I really like the
armbars.
Yeah, I really like the armbar.
Gotcha.
Fast and quick.
Okay, that's wonderful. I don't want to ask too many specific questions due to the fact that I know you've got a match coming up, but have you pulled the armbar off from you being on mount as opposed to the defensive armbar? Have you used it offensively when you were in mount?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes the spinning armbar or whatever, where you're on top and you turn and fall back, the falling back.
Yeah. I usually do that off of a sit-up sweep. I sit-up sweep them, then I get on mount and do it.
If you scissor sweep them, then so you have done it from mount. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're super experienced. Have you been primarily Ghee or Nogi? And what rule set is this match coming up March 21st?
The match is in Ghee. Okay. But I started off with Ghee, and then once we found out about Nogi, I gave it a shot, and it started from there. So I've just been doing Nogi.
So you've been doing Nogi for a while, but this match is in Ghee. Gotcha. Yeah. And obviously, traditionally speaking, as you know, and as you advance up the ranks of jiu-jitsu, all the traditional jiu-jitsu belts and all are done through Ghee, as you know. But clearly, I think as an MMA fan, and this is an MMA show, I think that Nogi is brilliant. And I'm so glad more people are doing it and hosting it. Naga has had it for a while now because Nogi really gives MMA options, more of an MMA bent. Speaking of Nogi, what do you like the best about Ghee? Because clearly this match is Ghee. So what do you like about Ghee when you're in Nogi? What do you kind of miss about Ghee?
Grips.
Grips?
Yeah. With takedowns, I like grabbing onto something instead of trying to have to hook into something, grab the wrist. I'd rather grab onto something.
Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking that you gave a real direct answer to that. I think that's one of the challenges sometimes when black belts, I've seen a couple black belt adults enter amateur MMA for the very first time. And oftentimes you could kind of tell that they're not used to not getting those grips, those collar grips and drags and all that stuff. I do think for like a street ready self-defense type, Ghee has a lot more realistic collars and things that you can use in a real self-defense situation that you can't use in MMA. So I know you've been doing a bunch, and we'll get back to the jiu-jitsu match you've got coming up. That's very important. But I also know that you've been doing karate, wrestling, and now you've started in MMA. So I'm going to take each one of those separately because you've got so much experience. Karate, you've been doing karate since you were 3. You're still in it. What is the most fun or exciting thing you've done or accomplished in or through karate?
Well, I go to karate to learn for my like kicks, my punches, different combos and stuff. Don't really do anything competitive for that.
Okay, absolutely. So it's for striking. That's perfect. Absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. As far as your wrestling, you're in 8th grade and you're at Bethel Park, the South Hills Wrestling Club. How is wrestling going for you? Because you're ending up, I'm sure, in a lot of positions where you'd love to use your armbar and your submissions. What's it like being in a wrestling world where there are no submissions?
Well, PA is one of the harder wrestling like states. So like after a while, you just kind of catch on because people just start like grinding on you, putting pressure. So like I just catch on from there.
Sure. How long have you been doing wrestling?
I was doing it when I was younger, like off and on. I would join classes or practices, but in 7th grade I took it seriously, and then I did it 8th grade because I thought it was really fun.
Okay, sure. So you're still doing it now, but one of the things you brought up, joining it in 7th grade, like full time, is that wrestling tends, I mean, some people start wrestling at 3 and 4 years old. And so I think it's a good challenge for you to jump in to a sport where some of the people you're wrestling, some of the guys you're wrestling will have more experience. And given your high level experience in jiu-jitsu, I mean, 187 wins over 195 matches in jiu-jitsu, I think it's good for you to get into an environment where they have more experience than you do. That's kind of a good thing. Speaking of that, you have begun to train at an MMA gym. I've actually seen some of the professional fighters fight for 247 fighting championships, but you train at Indio Dojo. And so what's that been like for you? When did you start training at Indio Dojo, and how's that been going?
Well, my dad was like his trainer. He worked him out, and then after that, my dad and him became close friends, and then I started going to his gym for MMA, and it was a good workout. And I was learning new things because MMA is mixed of jiu-jitsu, punching, kicking, and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And I had mentioned it earlier that MMA, as far as age goes, there's no MMA sanctioned fighting that I know of at your age range. But what have you liked the most about that blend, bringing everything together for MMA?
Because like I could stand up, punch, kicks, and like if once it's just like I don't feel like in control, I could just take it to the ground, or if I like in control at the top, then I just keep going at it from there.
Absolutely, certainly. And you mentioned knees for the Muay Thai in stand up, and obviously that's not something you can use in competition right now. But what do you enjoy about throwing knees?
We don't really throw knees.
Okay, you just
It's more,
practice.
yeah, it's more like to the body and legs. We're just practicing. No one really wants to get hurt, and it's just learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I meant more of the practice part. Yeah, certainly. And that's a big part of all levels of MMA, even pro levels of MMA. It's not really healthy or respectful to your partners, your training partners, if you're throwing knees, because they can really do a ton of damage. So obviously, I can see a lot of that. You know, when you talk about your training partners and your respect, you've been around a form of martial arts since you were 3. What do you think you've learned as far as respect and being a good teammate through all the various martial arts you've done?
They're there for you, so you're there for them.
Okay.
We all build each other up before a match. Even if they don't do good, we all still talk about it, help them build back up and see what they did wrong.
Absolutely. So not only are you talking about understanding that you're there for them and they're there for you, you know, nobody, even though you go out on the BJJ match by yourself, you're there because of everybody from your dad to your coaches to your teammates. Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit more about, I mean, obviously you're young, you're in eighth grade, and a lot of middle school mindset is to kind of harass or tease people when they don't do well. It's a problem, right? When you kind of poke or people kind of make fun of people if they lose or don't do well. But clearly you don't have that attitude. You have the attitude of you might talk to somebody about what they could do better. Why is that your attitude to look for ways to improve when maybe somebody is not doing well?
Because why would you want to put them down more when you can bring them up so they can go back out there and get second, third, do better than what they did before?
Well, that's a very mature answer, and it's a good answer. It's a great attitude to have at any age, not just 13, but at any age. And you also mentioned something that's important, which is progression, not perfection. Like a big part of your sport at any of the levels. Obviously, you're very dominant in jiu-jitsu, but at wrestling or anything is to recognize that doing better doesn't mean you go from losing to winning. It might mean that you go from losing to taking third place or fourth place, like you mentioned, and you slowly improve. And I've known some high school wrestlers when they're starting out where their entire goal is to just not get pinned, and then they try to improve from not getting pinned, and they slowly build up that way, which is really important. So turning our attention back, you've got this big match March 21st in Clearwater, Florida for the JitzKings, and it's actually going to be available for pay-per-view on Flow Wrestling, I believe. And what is that going to be like for you? I know you've traveled before, so what's the farthest place you've traveled for a competition so far?
California.
Okay, so that is farther. That is farther than Florida. Okay. Absolutely good. So you're obviously going to be traveling down to Florida. You're against a guy with a pretty good jiu-jitsu background as well from New York. So you're from the Pittsburgh area. He's from New York. How did you guys end up in Florida for this JitzKings?
My dad, during the wrestling season, my dad was like, hey, bud, do you want to do this thing maybe in Florida for Clearwater? I might be able to get you a spot.
Oh.
And so then they started talking, and then maybe a couple weeks later, my dad was like, "Yay, you're the first one they want to come to see if you want to do this," and I decided to do it.
Well, that is wonderful. It's a great attitude you have, and obviously your dad, Steve, is both your coach and your manager. Doing all those things for you. I have to correct it. It's Flow Grappling. I said Flow Wrestling, close. But if anybody does want to watch, it'll be on Flow Grappling, and that's going to be obviously a big event. Are there specific rules that I know, for example, at certain age groups, heel hooks are not allowed or knee bars. So do you know what submissions are or are not allowed in this match you've got coming up?
I really don't know, but I just know nothing like with the legs because we're younger. But
okay, nothing with the legs. Okay, so that would be any of the leg locks. Okay, yeah. Gotcha. That makes sense. Have you trained them? Do you know leg locks, or have you been staying away from them because they're not legal?
I haven't trained them yet, but I think when I'm gonna get older, I'm gonna start slowly translating into them.
Sure, transitioning into them. Absolutely, Jaden. There's so much, and I think it's important. I always try to point this out. Having rules are to help people enjoy the sport more. That's a big part of MMA. A lot of people go, I know your dad's involved in 247 fighting championships, and a lot of people go to amateur MMA and they're like, why can't they punch them on the ground? And it's because they're trying to keep beginner MMA fighters safe so they can get better at the sport. It's the same thing with BJJ. You don't want somebody tearing out their knee or having some serious injury when they're a child. And obviously you'll grow into some of those other situations as you develop. So far in your career of competing in any type, what was your favorite accomplishment or favorite moment so far?
Going to California for Worlds.
Okay.
That it was my favorite part because like when you're on the podium, they were like, Jaden's the world champion. It was cool.
The announcement, like they announced it.
Yeah.
Okay. And was that the Naga belt you have behind you, or was it a different world champion?
It's this medal right here. It's actually right behind me.
Oh wow, yeah, your back was I couldn't see it because your back was blocking. Okay, it does say world on it.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Yeah, that's great. So that's a huge accomplishment, and I'm glad that that's your favorite. Now you mentioned traveling to California a couple of different times. It was your farthest. It was the most accomplishment from getting worlds. What is it like to travel to a new area and then have to get ready for a competition?
It's like nervous, weird because it's like not where you're from.
Yeah.
So like you don't know what you're doing, kind of don't know where you're going. So it's just all new.
Yeah. Exactly. That's actually one of the things that most people your age that are in team sports, basketball, football, baseball, they don't really travel that big until maybe they get a little bit older or on a little bit more. But obviously, one of the advantages of BJJ matching is you have to be willing to travel all over to get the matches you need, which clearly you've been doing for years and years, which is a great thing. So, since I already asked you about the awards behind you, do you know offhand what your very first award was and how old you were when you earned it? I know you got into it early, so do you know on your rack what your first award was? I'm curious. Find it.
I think it's this one.
Naga, that's a Naga. Looks like gold.
Yeah, it's a Naga 215.
2015. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So that's 6 years ago. So you would have been so you were 7.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, well that's cool. And I'm impressed that you can just turn around and be like, well, here we go. You got all your awards behind you. That's so great. Well, let's ask you a question. You mentioned obviously going to a new area, you get a little nervous, get a little excited. What are you looking forward to the most about the March 21st matchup?
Um, I'm looking forward because it's like a bigger event. There's gonna be more kids, more matches to watch, see what different people are do, maybe try it when I get back to practice, meet new people, roll with them, you learn from them, they learn from you.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful aspect of BJJ. When you go to tournaments, BJJ tends to be an environment where people help each other. You roll with other people. You show people certain skills and techniques. You learn from them. You teach them. It seems to be a fairly uh, friendlier environment than some of the other type of sports. So that's a really great thing. I'm glad that you have such a great attitude about learning and getting better. What would you like to accomplish? I mean, outside of this fight coming up March 21st on Flow Grappling, what would you like to accomplish within the next year or so? What are kind of your next couple goals you want to aim towards?
Um, my probably hit the bigger tournaments. I was gonna do one last year, but like COVID.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to hit bigger tournaments, find people that could give me a challenge, and then I could learn off from those mistakes I did if I win, lose.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up something in your mention there, and that is in BJJ, it's more common to have tournaments, where you win and keep going. Sometimes in some of the BJJ tournaments, you actually have a 2-loss requirement where if you lose, you go into another and you keep, which I think is great, gets more experience. But do you prefer a tournament style or do you prefer the one-on-one match? Because this one coming up is a one-on-one match.
I'd probably prefer a tournament because there's more kids to go against.
Sure.
I still like the one-on-one, but like tournament, you get to go against more kids.
Absolutely. And What do you like about going against more as opposed to just one?
More because you can watch other people and you can see what they're doing in the match to prepare for what your match is. There's just more action to do. It's longer, more matches, like I said, and yeah.
Sure. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, when you think about this match coming up, I always like to ask all of the fighters I have or the martial artists I have on the show, I always like to ask them, who do they want to thank? Because a big part of any sport, particularly martial arts, is the humility to recognize that you're achieving because of other people helping you out. And so, who are some of the people you want to thank, whether it relates to your training or whether it's just life in general?
My mom, dad, Steel City Martial Arts, India, like they all help me train, get ready for this, prepare.
Yeah, that's a great group. Always the family first, right? That you as an athlete wouldn't be much of anything if it wasn't for your family supporting you and encouraging you, whether it be in stuff with martial arts or stuff outside of martial arts. Your greatest challenges and accomplishments are rarely inside a cage, as great as or inside on a mat. As great as that stuff is, you're gonna have aspects. You're in eighth grade, you're gonna have aspects in your life in high school and middle school going forward in the future that are kind of in a bigger situation than just competing. But it's been great having you on the show, and you have a lot of knowledge, wisdom, and a desire to learn, which is wonderful. What would be kind of the one thing you still want to say about this match coming up May 21st as we wrap up?
Coming for my revenge. He beat me when we were younger. So like just come back when we're more experienced and older.
Wow. Well, I can't let that be your last thing. I'm so glad that was your last statement. I do need to ask, I didn't realize it was a rematch. When did you first meet him?
We were younger. My sensei like hosts a tournament every year, and he flew down from New York, and we were young, maybe like 8, 9, but probably 9, and I was I was young, so I didn't really like. I just had one game plan, still learning. So like I went out and like he pulled guard, so I was trying to fight from there. Didn't really have much of a game plan, but now I do.
Sure. Sure. Well, I have to say, it's incredible to hear how you use your mind for this, knowing that, I mean, you were 8 or 9. I mean, you've had so many matches go your way with so many wins that you learn a lot from your losses. Clearly, you have. And it's cool, I think, in any, whether it's wrestling, boxing, mixed martial arts, kickboxing, I think it's always cool with the rematch because you get to learn a lot about yourself and your preparation. So it's actually really exciting. It's a rematch. I wish you the best in obviously your match coming up. And it's been great getting somebody on that's just at this point competing in BJJ because of how important BJJ is to MMA. And a lot of times people don't necessarily appreciate how valuable BJ is. So it's great to hear all that you're putting into the BJJ process. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Best wishes to you and your coaches and everybody's going, your parents, everybody's going down with you. I hope it goes really well for you, and thanks for taking time out to come on the show.
Thank you.
Best wishes to you. Have a good one.
Too.